Oh my goodness. Good morning, good afternoon. Whatever it is for you, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Zach Schaumler. This is Strong Opinion Sports, episode 322. It is 7:21 Sunday morning, the final day of the NFL regular season. Going to be kind of a crazy day. We'll find out who makes the playoffs in the NFL. Going to be very interesting. I'm excited to watch the Buffalo Bills play the Miami Dolphins. I'm really hankering to watch Daniel Jones and the Giants play. I want to see how he does. Today's episode's very short. I'm not going to hold you here too long. I really just want to talk about college football. We'll talk about the college football playoff, who won, who lost, and we'll talk about Georgia, Cincinnati at the very end. I want to start today by talking about this, though. On New Year's Day, in the college football playoff semifinals, Ohio State beat Clemson 49-28. And first of all, it's a fun game to watch. I really want to give a shout out to ESPN, something I very rarely do. The presentation of the game was awesome. The whole game felt epic, and I mean the hype package before the game. I was so excited, and then I really was glued to my TV. The first half of this game was amazing. The second half drug on a little bit as Ohio State pretty clearly was going to win. But shout out to ESPN, man. They did a great job, and it's kind of shocking actually. Like, this game was so well done by ESPN, and it's such a superior product to Monday Night Football, which is also done by ESPN. It's why can't Monday Night Football be as good as this was? I don't know. Maybe a playoff atmosphere helps. I have no idea. But every time I watch a really hyped up, big, intense college football game on ESPN, it's really well done. And it makes me sad that Monday Night Football isn't better. My only criticism, I guess, of the presentation was that I didn't like the yellow first down indicator on the bottom right of the screen. Made me keep thinking that there was a flag on every single play. I was like, oh, 1st and 10? Is there a flag? Oh, no, it's just because it's yellow for some reason. I don't know why they did that. But otherwise, man, every facet of the presentation, I don't normally talk about that when it comes to games. Phenomenal, very well done. Dabo Swinney, Clemson's head coach, he put his foot in his mouth, man. He was wrong. For whatever reason, I don't really understand. Well, he'll tell you his reason. I think it's stupid. Dabo Swinney ranked Ohio State number 11 in the coaches poll behind Coastal Carolina, which is laughable. And he kept criticizing Ohio State for, they only played 6 games. They didn't play enough games to be in this situation. I don't know if he was trying to avoid playing them or what was going on. I mean, they would have played 9 games if COVID hadn't happened. And really all that Dabo Swinney did here was add fuel to the fire. I think he motivated Ohio State, which I would never want to add any kind of motivation to a really, really good Ohio State football team. And I think it's also pretty clear. I mean, Ohio State got a lot of criticism. I said, look, I understand why people don't want Ohio State here. They didn't play a lot of games. But it would be ridiculous to leave Ohio State out of the college football playoff because they were the best team. One of the top 4 teams in college football. Then they beat Clemson soundly, and you're like, yeah, clearly they belong in the playoff. And anybody who thought they didn't, I mean, are you not trying to get the 4 best teams in the country in the college football playoff? I understand, they didn't play a ton of games. They only played 6, but I think people were out to get Ohio State just a little bit, and I don't know. I don't understand why people were so against Ohio State being there. Clearly, they belonged, and I would always want the best 4 teams in the playoff. And it's kind of weird too. I understand, normally during a normal year, hey, fine, a team only plays 2 games or however many, a small amount of games. Don't put them in. But during COVID, this crazy year going on, I think they get a pass, and I think it's totally fine. So Dabo Swinney looked really bad here. Now, many people kind of hate on Dabo Swinney, and really, they don't just hate on him. They actually hate him. Definitely, Dabo Swinney has put his foot in his mouth a couple times. He's a bit loud. He's a bit braggadocious. But I have talked to people who play at Clemson, people that play at Clemson. Some of them listen to this podcast. And everybody I've talked to at Clemson, they love the guy. His players love him. Dabo Swinney's players love him. He has their back. He's a coach who loves football. And anybody outside of the Clemson building just can't understand. Dabo has faults, and he's not perfect. But from a player standpoint, he's such a player-friendly coach. I would do anything to play for Dabo Swinney. He's awesome. He's a great guy. I think that, again, not perfect. Clearly, he said some stuff. I'm like, I don't agree with that. That's stupid. But, man, is he the kind of guy who his players love him. They fight hard for him. And I think you can hate Dabo Swinney, no problem. But I think it's a little bit silly when people say he's an awful person or this or that. I'm like, okay, he's loud, he's braggadocious. But at the end of the day, I will never forget what he said about Deshaun Watson. He said, Deshaun Watson is like Michael Jordan. Do not pass on him. And he has full, complete confidence in his players, and I just love that about him. Now, Ohio State dominated Clemson. Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence had a ton of pressure in his face all day, all game long. It just really, we learned. I don't know what we. I don't. For me, there's a lot of little things we could talk about and nitpick about the game and this and that, and I just I don't know. I think a lot of people, anybody who hates Trevor Lawrence, I don't really understand. A lot of people were so happy to see him fail and see him lose, and I don't really understand the desire to root against anybody. Like, let me define what a hater is. A hater is somebody who hates on somebody and really isn't open to them changing their mind. And you can, let me be clear. If you hate on somebody, you just want to see them fail. You are rooting for them to fail. That's what a hater is. Now, offering criticism is one thing, and you can say Trevor Lawrence should have done this or that, but a hater is somebody who isn't open to having a conversation. All they want is to tear somebody down and see them fail. And I don't really understand haters in anything. I mean, really, maybe the closest I've ever come to being a hater is I did a really intense segment about Mitchell Trubisky, the Bears quarterback. Other than that, I don't really, I try not to be that guy. I try to be like, hey, I'll say what I believe, and I'm willing for people to change my mind. And I don't really understand people who are eager to watch Trevor Lawrence fail and attack him. And we're so, took so much joy in watching the guy lose to Ohio State. Now, again, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about. All I want to talk about is Ohio State's quarterback, Justin Fields. Ohio State's quarterback, Justin Fields, was outstanding against Clemson in their college football playoff game. It was phenomenal. It was fun to watch. He was 22 for 28 passing, had 385 yards, 6 passing touchdowns, 1 interception. He also ran 8 times for 42 yards. And stats are great. Stats are impressive, and I thought he had some really great balls downfield and threw the ball vertically very, very well. Now, it's also worth giving some context. All this happened, and in the first half, by the way, he got nailed in the ribs on a third down run for a first down, and literally he only missed 1 snap the entire game. He missed 1 snap and then came back in the game, and so pretty much all, half of his stats were put up with a significant injury to his ribs. And the guy was clearly in a lot of pain. And I walked away going, this is just such an impressive performance by Justin Fields. And clearly the talent is there. And so I'm about to make a statement, a pretty strong statement about Justin Fields. But I want to offer context. I don't want people to think that, because, look, I'm not just reacting to the moment. I've watched every game Justin Fields has played all year. I'm not just talking about this game. I'm talking about his whole body of work this year and in the past. And when you look at his year, you have to acknowledge that Justin Fields had 2 bad games. He had a really bad game against Northwestern and a really bad game against Indiana. And they were like, oh, that's some stuff on film. I'm like, I don't like that. And so it's pretty clear and obvious to me there are things that Justin Fields needs to work on. Absolutely. Sure, I acknowledge that. I own that. But also, I would draft Justin Fields without any hesitation. If he's on the board and available, I'm like, I'm taking the guy. And I don't really know what that means in comparison to Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson. That's a conversation for another day. But I do know that whoever ends up drafting Justin Fields, wherever he goes, that team is getting an outstanding quarterback and a guy that on and off the field, I'm a big fan of. And so in this upcoming NFL draft, Justin Fields kind of reminds me of another guy named Justin Herbert. Remember, going into last year's NFL draft, I was down on Herbert. There were some bad moments on film. I went, ugh, I know he's really talented, but despite the talent, there's a lot of stuff I'm like, that makes me hesitate on film. But Herbert got good coaching, and as he went to the NFL, and the NFL got good coaching, and he challenged all that talent he has into really high-level good quarterback play. And so I think Justin Herbert and Justin Fields are similar, where in recent years, we have seen guys who have had problems in college, some film that makes you go, ooh, I don't like that throw, or that's a mistake I don't like. But they were really talented. Guys like, Justin Herbert, we talked about him, but also Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And so the mistakes that Justin Fields made this year, they don't really bother me the same way they would have a couple years ago. They scare me way less because I look at, hey, he's really, really talented. And if I was a coach, I would be certain I could take Justin Fields and help him become an amazing quarterback. I mean, if you're an NFL coach and you have any confidence, you're like, yeah, this guy clearly has a ton of talent. Hey, he's got some stuff we got to teach him. no big deal. Like he works hard. He's very talented. I think it's important to say, like, the progression he's made over the years, from year to year to year. Justin Fields has gotten better. I'm at Georgia in his first year compared to last year, compared to this year in his second year at Ohio State. His mechanics are better. He's literally throwing the ball better. He's much more comfortable reading defenses and going through progressions. And so seeing Justin Fields' steady improvement shows that Justin is willing to do the work it takes to get better. I'm like, perfect. He's talented. He works hard. If I'm a coach, I'm like, in a heartbeat, I'll take the guy. Now, let's compare Justin Fields to Trevor Lawrence real quick. There's a little bit of interesting stuff I can add. Justin Fields he moves better than Trevor Lawrence, the Clemson quarterback. He's more mobile. And if you're an NFL team with a bad offensive line, Justin Fields is more likely to succeed with you than Trevor Lawrence because Justin Fields can run and extend plays. The same way we've seen to probably a greater extent than Justin will, Deshaun Watson or Jalen Hurts or Russell Wilson. Like, if you can move, that's a key, good part of your game. And we saw in the college football playoff game, Trevor, under heavy pressure with the bad offensive line, struggling, losing one-on-one matchups. He's not very effective. So Justin's mobility, I think, is a huge asset that if I'm a team with a bad offensive line, I go, Trevor or Justin? Well, if we can't protect him very well, we might lean on the fact he can move around a little bit. That's worth noting. Now, Zach Wilson, the former BYU quarterback, is ridiculously talented. I really, if I were an NFL coach, I guess really the thing is talking to Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, having conversations with them face-to-face, getting to know them. If I was going to make a decision between the two, it'd have to come down to, like, who do I work with better? Who is more receptive to coaching? Who do I vibe with better in the meeting room? Because they're very similar in talent. However, the difference between Justin Fields and Zach Wilson is that Justin runs with more power. But they both do impressive stuff that if you look at their film, you go, like, there are multiple moments I watch Zach Wilson and I go, oh my goodness, that's a crazy play. And I watch Justin Fields and I go, wow, that's ridiculous. They both make me feel that way where I'm like, that's just something that's a crazy play. That's really impressive. And between Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, it's pretty neck and neck. The difference for me would have to be talking to them in person and getting on a chalkboard and seeing, like, who do I work with better? Who do I feel more comfortable working with in the future? But I do believe that there are at minimum, 3 really good quarterbacks in the upcoming 2021 NFL draft. You got, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, and Justin Fields. And there are going to be teams that I believe are going to pass on Justin Fields. And if you pass on Justin Fields for another position, say the Bengals draft Penei Sewell, the fantastic left tackle out of Oregon, hey, that's fine. Go get Penei Sewell. He looks like a generational talent at left tackle. But other than Penei Sewell, I don't really know what position you could draft that would kind of trump and be more meaningful than Justin Fields. Like, if you are a team and you draft a corner or a linebacker or a defensive end and you do not draft Justin Fields, oh boy. I'm looking at Atlanta. I'm trying to think of another team that is up there, Carolina. Like, if teams or whoever trades up, like, I cannot fathom a team with an aging veteran quarterback or a team that really doesn't have unless you have a Josh Allen or a Justin Herbert or a really young quarterback you believe in, like the Bengals have Joe Burrow. I can't really imagine passing on Justin Fields. And if you do, oh man, you're going to get reminded of that for years. I mean, this is kind of a cheap shot. I admit that. But don't forget, Washington could have drafted Justin Herbert. Now, I thought they got a phenomenal player, Chase Young, who I think is going to be a great defensive end. But who's had more impact in year one? Chase Young or Justin Herbert? I mean, that kind of conversation, I think it's more of a cheap shot because of how talented Chase Young is. But that kind of conversation is going to go on and on if anybody passes on Justin Fields, because I have utmost confidence Justin Fields is going to be fantastic in the NFL. Now, I do have an outsider's perspective on what I'm about to say next. I don't know Justin Fields. I've never met the guy. I don't even know anybody there are some teams around the nation that I have an inside track on. I don't have one with Ohio State. But I believe with an outsider's perspective looking in, I would imagine it had to be a year of growth off the field for Justin Fields because he's had all this Heisman hype. He's gotten all this attention. And he's been everywhere in the media. And then against Northwestern, he had some bad play. Northwestern, the Indiana game, he held on to the ball a bit too long. He tried to make big plays. He tried to, I think, force plays downfield rather than throw the ball away. And I thought that those mistakes he made against Northwestern and Indiana were all the pressure from the media manifesting and a guy trying to deliver on the expectations that have been laid upon him. And so that's my interpretation of what would happen. Again, this is mostly speculation, but I really, from the outside looking in, I go, we've seen a guy get a lot of media attention. And actually, if it's true that this has been a really hard year for Justin, hard is the wrong word there, but a year of getting a lot of information thrown at him, and it's forced him to grow, then that's very, very good. Now, I speak from experience on this one thing. When you get a lot of attention, and it's attention that, there's this overwhelming amount of both praise, where people, for Strong Opinion Sports, for example, people love my show. There are people that love me. And then there are people that hunt me down on social media and send me mean pictures and mean messages and all kinds of stuff. Like, I've gotten both a lot of praise from people that love what I do and a lot of criticism from people who hate what I do and hate me. So I know what it's like to get an overwhelming amount of information, both positive and negative. And when you have that coming your way, you have to learn how to manage it. And my belief is that Justin Fields has learned how to manage that kind of information being thrown his way this year. You also have to remember that the dude's only 21 years old. So for him to have kind of a growth with the media and the growth of attention, I think is very important for him. And I need to say this too. I've seen this a lot on social media, and I've gotten a lot of messages about it, and it's driving me nuts. People need to stop comparing Justin Fields to Dwayne Haskins. It's just not reasonable. They are different players with a different skill set, with a different background. They just have happened to both play at Ohio State. I don't really think that you can look at Dwayne Haskins' failure and say, Justin Fields is going to be another failure out of Ohio State just like Dwayne Haskins was. Justin is way more talented. I think my impression of him as a human being is he's more mature. Justin Fields has never given you any reason ever off the field to doubt him. In fact, he's only ever done stuff that has encouraged me with how he's carried himself. He's also been a starter for more years in college than Dwayne Haskins was. And so I think the Dwayne Haskins comparisons are really stupid and baseless, and they're just like different. Like it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand why people have this constant comparison of these guys went to the same school. They're clearly the same player. They're going to fail exactly the same. I go, I just don't buy it. I don't think it's true. I've seen a lot of people come from different schools and play really well and play really bad. And why? How come if Tom Brady was this great, amazing quarterback, how come every quarterback after Tom Brady from Michigan wasn't also amazing? Because that's not how it works. That's a stupid example. It's the only one I could think of off the top of my head. But I just hate when people compare the same, players that went to the same college and acting like they're going to have the same career in the NFL. Now, this year, the body of work I've seen from Justin Fields has given me a ton of respect for him. And his work ethic, really. He's made a bunch of improvements this year. And if I were an NFL coach, I would want to work with him. I would draft him. And I would give anybody who is, considering passing on Justin Fields, I would give those teams a warning. I'll give you a cautious warning. Do not pass on Justin Fields. I think he's incredibly talented. And some coach is going to look at him, fall in love, and say, I'm going to turn you into a great NFL quarterback. And if by any chance Justin Fields does fall in the NFL draft, all that will do is help him. He'll go to a better and better team the farther down the draft he falls. If that does happen at all, I don't think it will happen. But I think a lot of people have been up and down, and I've kind of come to a settled position on Justin Fields. He had some mistakes, absolutely. So did Justin Herbert, so did Josh Allen, so did Patrick Mahomes. And when you have a guy who clearly works very, very hard, but is also very, very talented, that's the kind of guy that makes it in the NFL, in my opinion. And I want to say one more final thing, too. I get called a Justin Fields hater a lot. And I've made videos sharing criticism of Justin Fields. I thought last year he needed to make improvements. And then I thought that I acknowledge he had 2 bad games this year. And I'm like, yeah, there are people out there that are concerned about that. And I acknowledge, I try to be honest and open and say what I really believe. I'm not a hater of Justin Fields at all. A hater is somebody who roots against somebody. So someone who hates on Strong Opinion Sports is someone who wants to see me fail because they hate me and they don't care what I say. They're not listening to any kind of conversation. There's no redemption arc. There's nothing. They just want to see me fail. I don't want to see Justin Fields fail. I'm not a hater. I never have been. I have offered criticism of him before. I said, like, hey, and you can watch the Northwestern game. He did some bad stuff. So I stand by my criticism of him. But at the end of the day, I'm not a hater. And in fact, I'm actually quite a big fan. And I want to try to learn from the past where we saw Justin Herbert, a guy who had a lot of problems in college, but also very clearly a lot of talent, go from college to the NFL, and bam, he succeeded. And we've seen a trend now with 3 quarterbacks recently, Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Herbert, where they struggled in college, had some things that make you hesitate on film, but at the end of the day, if they're talented and work hard, they're going to make it in the NFL. That is why I buy into Justin Fields. He's going to be an awesome NFL quarterback, and I would draft him in a heartbeat. All right, guys, that was wordy. That was long. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to take a short break. When I return, we'll talk about Alabama, we'll talk about Notre Dame, and we'll talk about Georgia and Cincinnati up ahead. My name is Zach Schomler. I'm going to take a short break. I will be right back. All right, we are back. Hope we're doing very, very well. Let's talk about more college football. Alabama beat Notre Dame 31-14 in their college football playoff game. I will say the game was closer than I thought it would be. It was a bit competitive early on. Competitive is the wrong word. Alabama was kind of dominating physically, but there was a drive by Notre Dame in the first half. It was like a 15-play, 75-yard drive. That's actually better than what I predicted. I honestly thought Alabama would win by more points than they did. But the game really made me sad because nobody ever gave Notre Dame a chance. Notre Dame really never did have a chance to win the game, despite what they'll tell you. They just got physically dominated. And so I think for like half a second watching this game, I was kind of angry. I went, dang it. And I was angry at the NFL College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And then I was like, well, I'm going to own my emotion. I'm not actually angry. I'm sad. I'm disappointed. And actually, I'm not even mad about that. I'm mad at the College Football Playoff Selection Committee because there just was not a clear, obvious fourth best team in the nation. There wasn't a team where like, yeah, here's a team that can have an opportunity and maybe a chance to compete with and maybe even beat Alabama. There just isn't that team in college football. And, even like this is, I think, a bit of a stretch, but like in the NFL playoffs, for example, Tennessee is going to get in. I don't think the Tennessee Titans have an opportunity realistically to win a Super Bowl or even like the NFC East winner, whether it's the Cowboys or the Washington football team or the Giants. Somebody with a losing record is going to make it into the NFL playoffs, and that team has no shot at winning a Super Bowl, despite, again, what they'll tell you. And we could extend the college football playoff to 8 teams. And that'd be exciting, right? But does the 8th team in the country really have an opportunity to beat a team like Alabama or Ohio State? I just don't think so. And I think it would be fun because it would offer good football. Like, I wish Florida had a game had the ability to play a meaningful game where they were fighting for something, because I think Florida would have had fewer opt-outs and had more fight in their bowl game than what we saw against Florida and Oklahoma. But there's just not a clear, good answer here because I implore you to answer, like, what team in the country could have been the number 4 team in the nation that would have had a realistic shot at beating Alabama. I just don't think that team exists. And so, I don't know. I hope that there are changes made to the college football playoff. I'd like to see an 8-team playoff because I'd like to see more teams play more meaningful games. But I watched the Texas A&M UNC game. North Carolina, Texas A&M was awesome. They were both fighting hard. Texas A&M wanted to win. They did win. They pulled away late. But I'm feeling like it was Florida's problem with not being motivated and having opt-outs rather than a general problem with the system. 4 teams is better than 2, what it used to be. And I don't know that, like, whatever team was 5th and left out of the college football playoff would have really had an opportunity to beat a team like Alabama. So, I don't know. I'm not really mad. I'm just kind of sad that I don't even know what I guess maybe I'm sad Alabama is just so dominating. They kind of tip the scales and ruin it's like watching a game that's not balanced. So you ever play like a video game where like the stats are not balanced and you can have a weapon that's just way more dominant? So everybody plays with everybody plays with a rocket launcher in some games, and you're like, they do that because it's the best weapon in the game by a lot, and therefore every other weapon is less meaningful. Alabama is so dominant, they're kind of just shattering all of the balance and reasonability in college football. Now, Devontae Smith was the star of this game, in my opinion. He had 130 catches. He had 3 touchdowns. So again, 7 catches, 130 yards, 3 touchdowns. DeVonta Smith is, in my opinion, the best receiver in college football. He better be the number 1 receiver drafted in the 2021 NFL draft. It's interesting, like, Justin Jefferson was the best rookie receiver this year in the NFL. And he was the 5th guy drafted. Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, and Jalen Reagor were all drafted ahead of Justin Jefferson. So I hope people don't make a mistake like they did with Justin Jefferson. Let's watch the best receiver actually get drafted first this time. And I don't know. It's kind of weird and frustrating. Like, we've seen Jerry Jeudy struggle, and Henry Ruggs has been unimpressive. And it's pretty clear, like, when you make that comparison that Justin Jefferson, a guy who dominated the SEC, was clearly the best guy. Did you watch? I just think that, man, DeVonta Smith, what he's done over and over and over again to other corners in the SEC against no matter who they play, he dominates. And so DeVonta Smith, in my opinion, better be the number 1 receiver drafted in the 2021 NFL draft. Now, Alabama is going to play Ohio State in the national championship. And what I love about this matchup is that I don't immediately know who's going to win. There are some games like Alabama, Notre Dame. I'm like, yeah, Alabama's going to win that game absolutely without even hesitating. This game makes me hesitate and go, Now, I do lean towards Alabama. I'm not really sure how you defend Alabama. They got a great running back, Najee Harris. They also have a great receiver, DeVonta Smith. They can, if you put more numbers in the box and play man-to-man coverage outside, you're really at a disadvantage because I don't know that anybody can cover DeVonta Smith in college football. And if you double team DeVonta Smith, they talked about it over and over and over again in the Alabama-Notre Dame game. Then you lose numbers in the running game, and Najee Harris will just destroy you. So I don't know how you defend Alabama. I don't think they're going to lose a game this year. However, it's going to be interesting. Ohio State has an opportunity here. And, of course, shout out to Mac Jones. I think he's awesome, too. This team, Alabama, reminds me a lot of the 90s Cowboys, where they had quarterback, running back, receiver. They had Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, and Michael Irvin. This Alabama team has Mac Jones, Najee Harris, and DeVonta Smith, and they are a team that can just put up all kinds of numbers on offense. It's really, really fun. And borderline, Mac Jones might be better than Tua was at Alabama. So he's a bigger athlete who I think, I don't know. Well, I'm really excited to watch Mac Jones enter the NFL. I think he's got some kind of opportunity to do some good stuff there and be a franchise quarterback. And he's not just good because of the people around him. Like, yeah, absolutely, he's elevated by playing with great, players around him. But he also has got some high-level stuff and some skill sets that make him an NFL quarterback, in my opinion. So it'll be fun to watch him. And I'm also really excited to watch Ohio State's quarterback, Justin Fields, against Alabama's defense. I don't know that I think that Alabama should be the favorite in this game. But I think from an evaluating standpoint, I just can't wait to watch and evaluate Justin Fields and see how he does against a really top-notch defense like Alabama. And, I just think he's going to be challenged. And I said what I said about Justin Fields. He's I think going to be a fantastic NFL quarterback. He's very talented. He works very hard. And he's got the right head on his shoulders. But it'll be interesting to see just like, hey, I get to kind of be indulgent and continue to evaluate him against a great defense like Alabama. It'll be very, very fun when that game happens. Now, shout out to a great bowl game I watched. One of the most interesting finishes to a game. I still maintain that Liberty, Coastal Carolina is my favorite bowl game I've seen all year. But Georgia against Cincinnati, man, it was really good. Really, really fun. And we've had a couple of bowl games this year. Texas A&M versus North Carolina was good. Liberty, Coastal Carolina. Now this game, Georgia, Cincinnati. Georgia won 24-21. They had a last-second field goal to take the lead. I actually had the lead 22-21. And then there was 1 second left, and Cincinnati got the ball on their own 3-yard line after a kickoff, got kneeled down. And so on the last play of the game, Georgia got a field goal to give them a 24-21 lead. Just a fun game, though, man. I really love what Cincinnati is building and doing. They dominate recruiting in Cincinnati. If I ever can, depending on where we're at next year, I would love to live in Cincinnati for 6 months if COVID's gone and if it's feasible. Someday in my lifetime, I want to live for a football season in the city of Cincinnati because of their proximity to all these other cities. It'd be fun to watch. There's so much great football there, and it would also be awesome if while I'm there, University of Cincinnati is a very good football team as well. I mean, go on Google Maps and then look at Cincinnati as a city. And look at how many hours it is to drive to Louisville, Chicago, Green Bay, Columbus, Ohio, Kentucky, we're Lexington, Kentucky. And I mean, even straight up driving to like Alabama, Florida, like, so here on the West Coast, I've driven to San Francisco, which is like 13 hours away. So in my head, everything that's within 13 hours feels drivable. And there are so many places within, 8 to 10 hours of Indianapolis is right by Cincinnati. Tennessee's within driving distance. There's so many, Pittsburgh, there's so many cities and teams, college and pro, in proximity to Cincinnati. I want to live there someday, and I really like their football program right now. Now, I'm also really excited for Georgia's future. They kind of feel like where Florida was 2 years ago, where it was Florida's first year with Kyle Trask. Remember, he got elevated to the starting quarterback halfway through the year. And the same kind of similar trajectory happened with JT Daniels, where JT Daniels only started 4 games for Georgia, but he won all 4 games and played really, really well. And JT Daniels pretty obviously elevated that Georgia football team and made their offense way more effective. And so I'm really excited to watch how Georgia can do next year with JT Daniels as their quarterback all year long, because, man, this Georgia team has been begging, even when Jake Fromm was their quarterback, they were begging for a great quarterback who could take them to the next level. I think JT Daniels might be that guy, and I want to see what they can do next year. It'll be really, really fun to watch them with a full year as JT Daniels as their starting quarterback. Now, also shout out to Cincinnati. Cincinnati has a fun quarterback, Desmond Ridder, who, I just love watching quarterbacks who can run around and are mobile. It makes it way more fun. Now, it's kind of sad to me. Cincinnati had the lead late. They couldn't score in the second half after their third quarter. That their opening drive in the third quarter was a touchdown. The long, I think like a 79-yard touchdown run by Cincinnati. Then after that, they couldn't score again, and they also couldn't stop Georgia late in the fourth quarter. So Cincinnati had the lead. They blew it. It kind of sucked. I know the game meant a lot to them. And I don't remember the name of the guy. There's some player from Cincinnati. The whole team from Cincinnati went into the locker room to change and cool off. And this one guy stood there just like sullen, watching Georgia get the trophy from the bowl game. Handed the whole trophy presentation. And I forget. I put it on my Instagram story. I can't remember the guy's name right now. Just that pain when it's like watching someone get married. Like watching. Imagine like going to your ex-girlfriend's wedding and just watching sad. Like, I wish that was me. That's what it felt like with this guy from Cincinnati. Google the moment. It was really kind of compelling and interesting. He just sat there the whole time, quietly, kind of sullen. And he's going to be, I think, exciting to watch next year. Whoever that guy is, I forget his name. I'm so sorry, but look up the story. It's kind of interesting there. That guy just sat, a painful thing, watching another team celebrate with a trophy he wanted for his football team. And I don't know, man. Really fun week of football ahead and really past. And college football is flawed, but I really want them to expand their college football play. I think it'd be fun and interesting, despite the fact that I think a Cincinnati or a Georgia or a Coastal Carolina, like all these teams that could have been added, Texas A&M got blown out by Alabama by a lot. And can anybody beat Alabama? I don't know, but I still would like to see those teams that didn't make it in play another more meaningful game against another school. Like, why can't UNC and Texas A&M and Oregon and Cincinnati and Georgia like all get in and just have a good time with even more meaningful, a higher frequency of meaningful, fun football games? I'd love to see that. I want to end today's show by just giving just a thank you to everybody. 2020 is now over. 2020 is I never expected a year like 2020 to happen, and that's kind of obvious to say. But I thought when I started covering sports, I'm like, I'm going to cover sports for a living. Hey, that's really safe because you will always, no matter what's happening politically or this or that, like, there's always going to be more sports. And halfway through the year, man, there wasn't any, sports got canceled, like, across the board. There was, like, weeks with nothing. And I was pretty nervous. I'm like, man, I thought I had a foolproof plan. I'm going to do a business around covering sports. And I got really scared. And it was definitely the most challenging year I've ever had as a small business owner. But I want to say just thank you to the people who were there for those hard months, and I covered whatever I could. I did whatever I could. There were people on Patreon that never left. They were there even when there were no sports happening. They still continued to support what I'm doing on Patreon. I just want to say thank you to you guys. It means a lot to me. We got through 2020. Things are looking up. I think it's going to be a great year for sports and for the show. I'm also looking to expand into other stuff. I'm doing a movie podcast very, very soon. I want to do more than just sports in case anything like this ever happens again. But I don't know. I just want to say thank you to the people who helped get me through 2020. Sports came back. We were okay. But there was that time in the middle of the year, around June, July, I was just like, man, this is getting really dark and really rough. And I appreciate the people who were there for me, that supported the channel and supported the podcast when I needed it most. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy today's football. It's going to be amazing. Hope you have just a good time. I love you. I appreciate you. Ba-dum-bum. Bam. We are done.